Hey guys, in today's tutorial we're going to be making this basket head. We're going to design this in Blender. This is a pretty popular style head. Gets used a lot and you can do some pretty cool things with these. Make them thicker, thinner, shorter, taller. You could do them with 4 prongs, 3 prongs, 6 prongs, 8 prongs. However you want to make them. But we're going to do this 4-prong head today. And let's get started. I'm going to put this aside and let's get going. When you open up Blender, you have your initial screen here, so we're going to kind of zoom in. First thing I want to do is I want to make the 2 rings that go around, and I'm going to do that by hitting Shift A. Then we're going to go up to Mesh. We're going to select Torus. Now here we're given a basic torus. Go over to the Tools tab, and then we can give this some extra properties. For instance, I'm going to give it some minor segment increase to make it a little smoother. Give it a little more definition by adding, bringing this up to 84, and I'm going to bring this up to 40. Okay, so here's our first mesh. I also want to make this a little thinner. If you notice here, we have rather thin rings. They're not as thick as this. So let's put that aside, and we can do that by adjusting the minor and major radiuses. So I'm going to adjust those a little bit to make it a little bit smaller. There we go. I kind of like that. And there's our first one, and I am going to hit Shift D and then press Enter to make a duplicate. I'm going to bring that up, and we're going to make that a little larger by hitting S and then moving your mouse away slightly. And I'll bring that up a little bit more. Okay, so there's the 2 rings that we see in the basket. So the bottom ring here, over here, and the upper ring right around here. The next part we have to make are the prongs that come up. So when we look at the prongs, we want to, we kind of want these prongs to be, if you notice here, we're rounded on one side, flat on the other. We're going to do the exact same thing. So I'm going to start by adding a cube. So Shift A, Mesh, and then we're going to come down to Cube. It's going to put a cube in the middle. I'm going to hit S to size it down, and then I'm going to hit SZ to make it taller. I'm going to make it about that tall. I'm going to enter perspective mode using my numeric keypad by pressing 1. And I'm going to bring this up just so we have that about where we want it. And it looks like this could be a little higher too, so I'm going to move that right about there. That looks about the dimensions of a basket. Now, let's take a look at how we want to modify this cube. What I'm going to want to do with this cube is round 2 edges of it. So I'm going to go into edit mode, hit tab to enter edit mode. Oh, I got the wrong item there. So I select the cube, then press the tab key, and now we're in edit mode, and we're going to make some bezels on 2 sides of this. What I'm going to do here is press, well, if you notice, I've got my edge selector right here on the bottom corner, or on the bottom side. You see we have vertex, edge, and face. We want the edge. I'm going to grab this edge here. I'm going to hold the Shift key down and select this edge right there. So I've got both edges. The next step is to use the bevel key, which I believe is, how about Control B? Control B. Now I'm giving this a little bit of a beveled edge, and I want to round this off to match the prong. So I'm going to rotate the mouse wheel, and you can see by rotating the mouse wheel we're giving this kind of a nice radius. And I'm going to do it about there. So I've got about 7 radius curves in there. Press the mouse button, hit the tab key, and now you can see our prong is nice and rounded on one side, and flat on the other. So now this is where we have to, we're going to create an object and rotate it and move it into place. So how we do that is basically using the mirror key or the mirror modifier. So with the prong selected, come over to the object properties. We're going to hit the little wrench, which is the modifiers. I'm going to select the generate mirror modifier, and we're going to hit Z. We're going to uncheck X. So now what we have is the mirror modifier. Actually, if I do X, leave that. Let's just see, tab, all. Okay. Let me go back and just tell you that we're going to leave it on X. We're going to keep it like that. And you can see by doing that, what I'm actually doing is making a complete mirror image of the prong. Now, these have to be angled, and how we angle them, go back into perspective mode. Basically what we're going to do is we're going to rotate the one that we're editing, because this one here is just a mirror image. I'm going to rotate it along the y-axis. Now, why I say the y-axis, because this is the y-axis, the green line, and if I rotate it along the y-axis by hitting R and then Y, you can see we rotate it along the y-axis only. Select the right mouse button and it'll cancel that. I'm going to go back into perspective mode and kind of put this right about here. Move it over just a little bit more. And press rotate R and then Y, and then you can see I can rotate it just about like that. Now both of them are in the exact same position but on opposite sides of the two circles that we made. So if I come back here, you can see that what we have is our prong, and I'm going to move that over just a little bit, right about like that. Perfect. Our prongs are nice and rounded on the outside. We've got an exact mirror image here, and the two circles are perfect for what we wanted to do. I'm going to hit the tab key to enter object mode, and now you can see I only have 2 prongs, and what we want is to have 4 prongs. So I'm going to duplicate this, the prongs, and then rotate them 90 degrees. So with the prongs selected, hit Shift D and then press Enter, and now we have a duplicate of that. Then press R, Z, and then 90. And now you can see we have 4 prongs. Press Enter when you're done. We have 4 prongs all in the exact same position, all at 90-degree angles of each other. Now, this is not one piece. We have multiple pieces here, and we have this piece here, and Control Z is what I do to undo. I press Control Z to undo my changes. So you can see we basically have 1, 2, 3, 4 items. So we have to join them. So I'm going to select the prongs here, and then I'm going to hold the Shift key down and press the upper circle. Then I want you to go back to the Tools tab on the left, go down to where it says Boolean, and press Union. Now you see that everything changed from orange and red. Now it's just orange or yellow, and we have now 1, 2, 3 pieces. So now I'm going to select the circle and this prong, and I'm going to do the same thing. Select the Union button on the Boolean options. So now we have this piece here, and we have this piece here, and we want to join those. So we're going to hit we've got the ring selected. I'm going to hold the Shift key down, select the rest of the head, and then press the Union button again. Now what we have is one object. Right here it's called Cube 001. You can make it whatever you want. You want to just double click the cube name and then give it a name of whatever you want. We'll call this basket head. Okay. The next thing we want to do is give it a smooth shading, and the reason we want a smooth shading is because we want it to when we think in terms of designing jewelry in CAD, you always want to think in terms of the final product, and we want a nice smooth edge, because a 3D printer will actually print these little rims and ridges out, and it'll kind of look a little funny. So come over to smoothing, and you'll notice our object looks a little funny. That's okay. We're going to go and add one more modifier to this. So with the head selected, come over to the little wrench, select add modifier, and then come down to edge split. And you'll see what it does is it makes all the rounded surfaces nice and smooth, but retains all the flat edges. Then I want you to hit apply to the modifier. And now what we have is an object that's nice and smooth with good definition. I'm going to size this down just a little bit, and we'll bring that down. And that is our basic 4-pronged basket head. I'm just going to give this a quick render so we can see what it looks like. Okay, our rendering's done, and let's just compare it to the picture of the real head that we have. And you can see that although one is white, one is yellow, it's a pretty good design of a basket head. This obviously has thicker prongs, but you can play with those. And for instance, we'll practice that with the next version. We're going to do another basket head, but we're going to make it a little bit differently. And we're going to get into using circles this time, because I think sometimes circles can be a little more complicated, but they can give us a much better design. Okay, let's go to File, New, and we're going to load up our startup file again, which is a blank screen with the canvas. And now we've got our blank screen. What I want to do now, we're going to make another basket head. This one's going to be completely different. We're going to hit Shift A, and we're going to select curve this time, and we're going to select NURBS curve, and that should give us a nice little curve just around the axis in the center. Now we're going to do one more add-on here. We're going to add another circle, so we're going to do Shift A. I'm going to come down to curve, and I'm going to select circle, and you can see that we have this big circle here. We're going to actually size this down, so I want you to hit S and then 0.2 and press enter. That brings it down to 20% of its original size. Now there's a funny thing we can do with curves, because here's our curve here, and here's the arc that we made. This arc is actually going to be the pattern of our prongs. This curve is going to be the pattern of the arc. So what I want to do is select, well, let's do this here. We've got the NURBS curve selected. Let's come over to the object naming box. So we're going to double click on NURBS curve. We're going to call this prong and press enter. And we're going to call this curve, which is select the circle, and it says Bezier circle here. Double click it and call that pattern. Press enter. So now here's our prong, here's our pattern. As you can see in Blender, you can select either the objects here in the control panel, or you can select them in the 3D window. So I'm going to select the NURBS curve, or the prong, and we're going to come down to the object properties, and you'll see this little line here with 2 dots on it. That's the curve properties. So I'm going to select that, and now we're going to give this a bezel, or we're going to give this some depth. So with your NURBS curve or your prong selected, come down to where it says bevel object. It's under geometry, so if yours is closed, just open up the geometry. Select bevel object, click in the box, and you'll see it says pattern. And there we have our pattern. Now it looks kind of funny, but don't worry, we're going to fix that. So the first thing we want to do is we notice this is kind of a very thick rendition of a prong. So I want to grab the Bezier circle or our pattern circle, and you see when we grab it or we highlight it, it turns yellow. And I want you to press S and then scale down. And that should scale us down quite a bit. Okay, now we're going to select our prong object, and we're going to hit Tab to enter into edit mode. Now I'm gonna put us into perspective mode. I'm going to use the 7 key on my keypad, and that'll give us a flat view from the top down. And here we're working a little upside down, but that's okay. I want you to select all, and then I want you to come over to the Tools tab on the left. You'll see under Modeling it has Subdivide. Hit Subdivide. And now we have multiple points that we have to work with. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select this point here, hold the Shift key, and grab this point. So I've got the 2 bottom points. I'm going to hit S and then X, and I'm going to bring them in along the X-axis. I'm going to move them down a little farther using the arrow. Then I'm going to go to the next set. This point here, or this vertex there, I'm going to hold the Shift key down and select this vertex. We're going to move that down just like this. Then we'll come over to this vertex, press and hold the Shift key and select the opposite vertex, and then move that down, kind of like that. So you can see we've got kind of a U-shaped prong. So I kind of like that. We're going to change this just a little more. I'm going to grab the 2 bottom vertexes again. I'm going to hit SX to size them, and I'm going to size them down a little bit. And then I'm going to hit the 2 above that. Shift key, grab the second one. Once you hit SX, and then we're going to bring those in, kind of like that. Okay. And what we have here is a nice U-shaped prong. It's actually 2 prongs. I'm going to hit Tab to enter object mode. I'm going to rotate this along the X, so I'm going to hit RX90. And what you see is it kind of rotated the wrong way, so I'm going to cancel that with the escape key. I'm going to hit RX, and we'll do 270. And now we're straight up and down. Now, with that said, I've got my shape that I want. We can adjust the size by selecting the pattern circle and pressing S, and you can see we can kind of do all kinds of funky things with that. It's pretty cool. You can also edit that circle by zooming in, pressing the Tab key, and you see on the circle I have these 4 lines. If I grab the center vertex on this particular pattern and I move it along the X-axis, you can see I can change the shape and style of my prong head, which is pretty neat. That one kind of ovaled out. We're gonna hit Command Z to undo that. But you can kind of move these in any direction you want, flatten them out on either side. You can see I'm making that concave, so you can get pretty fancy with these. So go ahead and practice this. But for now, we're just going to stick with the basic circle. Okay. Now, when you're modeling in Blender, you model in meshes. This is a curve. So we can't really model this curve until we get it converted to a mesh. So that being said, I'm going to hit Tab to get into object mode. I'm going to select my prongs, and I'm going to press Alt-C, and you see we have curve from mesh or mesh from curve. This is the conversion tool. So we're going to convert this to a mesh from a curve, and I'm going to click that. And now what we have, we've done 2 things. We've converted this to a mesh, and you can figure that out by pressing the Tab key, and you can see we have all of the vertexes, faces, and edges. And I'm going to tab back out in object mode, but we've also disconnected it from our circle. So at this point, you can't size this or change its shape or adjust any of these. It's not going to affect this. It's been disconnected from the circle as our pattern. So with that being said, we can get rid of the pattern now. So you can highlight the pattern. I'm going to be in object mode. With the pattern being highlighted, press X and then delete. Now the next thing I want to do is edit the mesh so that we can close these two holes that we have up here. And we're going to do that in a, we're going to do this pretty simply by just closing them up and leaving them flat. But normally I would give them kind of an edge or a rounded surface. So let's go into edit mode by pressing tab. Let's zoom into this particular side, and I'm going to select my edge tool here, which is already selected. I'm going to highlight one of the edges. You can see I've got it highlighted here. I'm going to press and hold the Alt key and press and click on that edge one more time. You see it draws a circle completely around there. To fill in that circle, we can press the F key and it closes the hole that we had. Now I'm going to go do that on the other side. I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to select an edge. Make sure you select the correct edge because it is possible to select something over here. Remember, you're working in 3 dimensions. We're going to select that edge, press and hold the Alt key, click the edge again, and then press the F key. Now our mesh is completely solid. I'm going to press tab to go into object mode. And we're going to come over to the modifiers object property. We're going to add a modifier of edge split. And you can see it gives us a flat surface. We have a nice curved arc. Now I want this to be 4 prongs. So very similar to the last basket, we're going to hit Shift D and then press Enter. And we're going to hit RZ90. And there's our 4 prongs. So if we're looking at this, these are separate objects, this set here and this set here. We want to join them just like we did before. So I'm going to hold the Shift key down and make sure both are highlighted. One would be orange, one would be yellow. Come over to our Tools tab on the left. Select Union. Remember, it's the upper one, not the bottom section. This says Brush Boolean. Do Auto Boolean. That's the one we want. We're going to hit Union. And now we have one object of 4 prongs. Almost done. We're almost done. So now what I want to do to add in a rim around this so that we can have a basket effect is what we did with the first example. We're going to come over to our screen with our mouse there. We're going to press Shift A, go up to Mesh, and add a torus. Again, we're going to modify this torus. Before you make any moves or changes to it, you can come over here and modify its properties. We're going to bring this up to 36. We're going to bring this up to 80. Okay. You can click in here and also type in a number. I'll do that, 36. We're going to scroll down a little bit till we get to major and minor radiuses. And we're going to kind of make this a little bit smaller, about as big as the prongs. And that's about where I want it there. I'm going to hit the S key and I'm going to size this to right about there. That looks good. Maybe a little more, right about there. Well, this looks a little thicker than I'd like, so I'm going to kind of get rid of this. Highlight the ring, hit delete. Let's go ahead and do that again. Shift A, Mesh, Torus. Let's give this, oh, it's got the same properties. Let's make it a little smaller. There we go. I like that. That's nice and thin. That way the rim doesn't look too heavy. Okay, so now we're going to move this up a little bit. Its size. I'm going to bring that up just a little bit. Let's look at this in perspective view. In your keypad, press 1. And I think we can get this moved over just a little bit. Right about there. That's good. Now let's join these objects together. So I'm going to hit Shift and then select the prongs. Go back to the Boolean tools, select Union. And there is our 4-prong U-shaped basket. Pretty good looking. I'm going to give this a smooth surface. We're going to give it an edge split. Just do it again, hit apply. And now I'm going to give this a texture by coming over to the Properties tabs, select Materials, just like we did with the last. Press New, select the metal, select Gold, bring your roughness should be down to 50. Let's bring that down to 50. Let's take a look at what this looks like in our camera view. And I'm going to quickly show you how to get a rendered view out of this real fast. If you come down to where this little ball is right here under where it says the word prong, we can come down and select rendered. It'll give us a quick rendered view. I'm going to add our plane in so we can see the plane. And just let that render out real quick. It's not as pretty as doing a full render, but it does give you an idea of what the object looks like. And that's it. Let's go back to object view and solid. Turn off my camera. So go ahead, guys, practice with this. That's a couple of different baskets. I'm going to show you next week how to combine all of these so that we can make kind of a fancy arch top on a ring. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more, then subscribe. I put out videos once or twice a week, so there's all kinds of stuff coming out. Keep your eyes open. And if you want to support this channel, you can go to Patreon. The link is below, and I'd appreciate anything you can offer. Have a great day and happy jewelry making.